Welcome to Politics Unplugged. I'm Ann Trujillo. It's been just over a week since a school shooting in Santa Fe, Texas. 10 people died in that shooting, the 22nd school shooting so far this year. Yet another national tragedy that brings us back to the conversation of what should be done, what can be done to keep our kids safe in their schools. And there are strong sides and opinions to the debate. Those who support more security at schools, often in the form of armed security officers or teachers, and those who support tighter gun control regulations. Now, after the shooting in Texas, Parkland, Florida school shooting survivor David Hogg tweeted out a link to the March for Our Lives website that shows orange price tags. Those, they say, are the amount every student's life is worth based on how much money politicians have accepted from the NRA. And they single out Colorado Republican Senator Cory Gardner, who they say got more money from the NRA than any other member of our congressional delegation, $3.8 million. They divide that up to $3.94 per Colorado student. Now, the NRA is blaming this latest school shooting on what it calls a culture of violence and the overprescription of the ADHD drug Ritalin. Clearly, this is not a simple issue. Clearly, no easy answers. And here to discuss this with us are Laura Carno, the founder of Faster Colorado, a group that helps train teachers and administrators on how to protect themselves and students using firearms. We have Marnie Kamensky of Colorado Ceasefire, a group focused on stricter gun laws, and Madison Rose of the student-run organization Never Again Colorado, also joining us today. And Madison, I want to first start with you because your group started after the Florida shooting. Have you had the response that you were hoping for as a student-run group?
I think so. One of the things that surprised me the most leading up to the march and organizing it was seeing how well the community came together. Not just Democrats, but people all across the political spectrum who just wanted to put an end to senseless violence in our schools. And we actually expected about 8,000 people at the march, but we got well over 100,000. And I think one of the most amazing feelings being on that stage that day was knowing that every single person in that audience was there for the same reason. And it was a really overwhelming feeling. But yes, we've had an amazing response so far.
And ultimately, what is it that your group would like to see accomplished?
We just want to see an end to this violence. I think a huge misconception is people think that we want to take away people's guns, and that's not it at all. We just want to find some kind of balance, something within the gun reform debate that we can use and work on to help ensure the safety of our children in schools.
And I know, Marnie, Colorado Ceasefire started after Columbine because of what, according to your website, was a lack of significant gun legislation. Where do things stand with your organization?
On what specifically? We are still advocating for common sense gun reform at the Capitol. We just tried to pass a red flag law and extreme risk protection order to try and keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people or who could be a danger to themselves or others. That unfortunately failed. But we will continue. We will continue to fight for common sense gun legislation.
And I know, Laura, with your organization, you say there is a growing national acceptance of the idea of armed teachers. Where are you seeing that? How is that working? How is that happening?
Right, so here in Colorado, where it's been lawful for 15 years for school boards to authorize armed staff, it's gone from nothing 15 years ago to my organization, which offers the training at either free or reduced cost to the school districts for those who are armed. I'm working with 25 school districts right now within Colorado who are already authorized, have some staff authorized, and then another dozen or so that the school boards are talking about it right now. So, and this mirrors a national trend.
And is this primarily rural school districts, or where is this happening?
You know, the rural schools are always the early adopters because they are so far from law enforcement. I think we'll see that rural to suburban move as suburban schools say, well, hang on a second, it doesn't matter if we have 3-minute or 5-minute response time from law enforcement. These things are over in that amount of time. So how do we stop the killing as soon as possible?
And who exactly is being trained, and how does what kind of training is involved?
Yeah, so it's whoever is authorized by the school board. So the average is 60% of them are actually not teachers. They're principals or superintendents or coaches, or they're somewhere not tied to a schoolroom, and 40% are teachers. What we do know about these folks is they have significantly more than average firearms experience. They've already been concealed carry holders for quite a while, so they come to us with very high skill level. We're teaching them that one narrow skill of stop a killer and stop the bleeding. There's 5 hours out of the 3 days that's medical training.
So what do you two think about this concept?
I think it's a ridiculously terrible, horrible, no good, bad idea. But in all seriousness, if more guns meant that we were safer, we would be the safest country in the world. The U.S. has 20 times the gun fatality rate of any other comparable developed nation, and we are first in the world for gun ownership. So more guns equals more gun violence. And I think if guns are introduced into the schools, who knows what can happen? And I think that's only going to lead, the evidence shows that's only going to lead to more violence.
Madison?
I think that's interesting, both of your points and where you're coming from. At Parkland, wasn't there an armed security officer there, and he was unable to stop the
As well as at Columbine and Fort Hood.
He didn't go in. He didn't go in.
So what? So my question would be: is that we don't know what could happen. There are a million variables in an active shooter situation. That even like the best trained SWAT officer might feel nervous or apprehensive and not execute their job the way that they should, because there's adrenaline and there's confusion about what's going on. And what happens if the SWAT team does go in and they see a principal with a gun? Do they know if he is the active shooter? How do they distinguish that?
That's one of the issues.
Who the shooter
And
is.
so there's some inaccuracies there. There was, right after Parkland, shortly after Parkland, there was a shooting in a school in Maryland, and the school resource officer sprinted to the scene, stopped the bad guy. So I think the fact that Parkland had a school resource officer who refused to even engage, refused to go in the building, where we had Coach Aaron Feast, who put his body between bullets and children to save them. If Coach Feast had access to a firearm, could he have stopped the bad guy before he killed any more people?
I think another question would be is, would they want to? Would they want to shoot one of their students? It's someone like Paula Reed. I was hearing her talk at one of our events, and she was talking about how she was close with some of the shooters from Columbine and how she taught them. Why would you want to ask a teacher or principal to, I know that it's a terrible situation and that they're hurting other people, but it's a bad situation.
And so we're not, nobody's asking anyone to do this, they are volunteering.
So it's optional.
It's completely optional, completely voluntary. And the people who sign up, they see that situation as, I can save 10 kids, 20 kids by stopping the killer. And we teach them that if somebody is trying to kill your students, they're no longer that kid you liked yesterday. They are a killer, and they have to be stopped. So absolutely all volunteers. And they come to us with, they self-select into this. So they have that mindset of wanting to not be a sitting duck and wanting to protect their kids.
So unfortunately, we have just a minute left. So for each of you, what is it that you would like to see accomplished? What do you see as a viable option?
Listen, I mean, we can talk about arming teachers. We can talk about bulletproof glass on the windows. We can talk about single entry and exits, but none of that is getting to the real issue of easy access to guns and lax gun laws. And until we figure out how to deal with that specific issue, this is going to keep happening because these are all Band-Aid approaches to the problem.
Laura?
I'm for all of the above. The last resort is if, God forbid, something happens, there's somebody on site to stop it, and if that's an armed teacher at Faster Colorado, we will train them.
And you get the last word.
And I think it's a very complicated thing to sum up
yes.
in 1 minute, but I think that if we look at how at our gun culture, not just the guns themselves, but how us as a society treat guns, and how we incorporate that into our lives, and how we address mental health as well. That's something that we can't ignore either.
Yeah, we didn't even get to the mental health issue or the parent liability or gun ownership, any of those issues. And so thank you. We were just barely able to scratch the surface. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it. We'll be right back.